"You're just an AC tech," she snapped. Right there at the dinner table, in front of her rich friends. That's when I knew I wasn't her sister anymore. Hey there. Thanks for clicking on today's story. Maybe you're folding laundry, commuting, or just trying to wind down. Whatever you're doing, I hope you'll take a few minutes to really lean in, because today's story is one of betrayal, grit, and the kind of growth that only comes after heartbreak. Imagine giving everything you have to someone you love, only to be told you're not enough just because of what you do for a living. Ever been there? Stick around, because this story doesn't end where you think it will. And hey, if you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to subscribe. It helps me keep bringing real, raw, human moments straight to your screen. Let's get into it.
You ever build something from nothing, only to have the person you built it for spit on it like it was garbage? That's how I'd begin, if someone asked me how it all started. But stories never really start at the worst moment. They start in the quiet, in the grind, in the stuff nobody notices. I'm Morgan Hale, 37, founder of Bolt Flow Systems, a heating and cooling company out of Akron, Ohio. Not glamorous, I know. Nobody dreams of ductwork and boiler pressure sensors, but it's honest work. It saved me, and for a while, I thought it would save my sister too. Her name is Lena. Well, Lenora Marie Hale, but nobody calls her that. She's 20 now, smart, gorgeous, fluent in French for no reason at all. And for the last 5 years, I've been the one signing every check that kept her enrolled at Creswell University, one of those Ivy-laced dream schools with fountains and Latin mottos no one understands. We weren't born into money. Our parents, Carl and Eileen, were two of the most decent people you'd ever meet. Dad fixed trucks. Mom ran a neighborhood daycare out of our kitchen. I grew up hearing lullabies over the hum of a microwave. Lena grew up different. By the time she was 10, my business had started paying off, and she never had to worry about whether the gas would stay on in winter. The difference between us isn't just age. It's the way we view the world. I see gears and solutions. She sees status and strategy. I was under the hood of my first HVAC unit at 18. By 25, I had 10 employees and a commercial contract with the county. By 30, I'd bought our parents' house back after it had been foreclosed during their medical bankruptcy. And by 31, I was parenting a teenager I never expected to raise. Our folks died in a car crash on Route 18, one winter night after a rare dinner out. The irony? They were celebrating being debt-free for the first time in years. I remember the phone call, Lena screaming, my own knees giving out in the middle of a job site. After that, it was just the two of us. And I promised them, wherever they were, I'd give her everything they wanted for her. But here's the thing about giving someone everything. Eventually, they forget it ever had a cost. And the moment Lena started pretending I didn't exist was the same moment I realized I might have been raising a stranger. What she said to me that Thanksgiving? Well, we'll get there. But first, let me show you what came before the break. Let me tell you how a woman in steel-toe boots became the villain in her sister's fairy tale. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I got a text. Not a call, not a voice note, just one of those bubble-wrapped messages that say too little and mean too much. Lena, hey, I'm hosting a Friendsgiving thing at my apartment. You can come if you want. Casual, Saturday before break. No hi, no love you, just that. 7 words. I stared at it for almost 10 minutes. I wasn't sure if it was an invitation or a warning. The last time I saw Lena in person was during Parents' Weekend in the spring. I'd driven 5 hours after a triple shift, still wearing my company polo, and she'd barely introduced me to anyone. When her roommate asked what I did, Lena said I managed operations in building logistics. Whatever the hell that means. But still, I replied, me, sure, want me to bring anything? She took 6 hours to respond. Lena, maybe cranberry sauce. Bradford's family recipe doesn't include cloves. Bradford, right, the boyfriend, the finance major with a family yacht and teeth too white to be trustworthy. I'd met him once at a rooftop mixer Lena begged me to attend, just to blend in. He greeted me with a nod, like a hotel concierge acknowledging someone slightly underdressed. I should have said no. I had every excuse in the world: deadlines, inspections, a busted chiller unit in an ER wing. But something in me, it was probably guilt, maybe hope, said yes. Maybe this was a step forward, a chance to reconnect. So I did what older sisters do. I showed up. That Saturday, I left the shop early, swung by a boutique market, the kind where everything is labeled artisanal and costs double, and picked up the organic ingredients for my mom's cranberry sauce. The real recipe, not the version some yacht club chef bastardized. But still, I changed clothes in my truck. Deep green sweater, pressed jeans, boots that didn't have steel toes. I'd done my hair, put on mascara. It felt ridiculous, like I was dressing up for a role I didn't audition for. Lena's apartment was nestled in a luxury complex just off campus. Faux marble lobby, controlled entry, a concierge who side-eyed my tote bag like it contained explosives. She opened the door before I knocked. "Hey," she said, eyes flicking down to my boots before offering a quick half smile. "Hey yourself," I replied, stepping in with a careful breath. Brought the sauce, real cloves included. Lena gave a tight laugh. "We can make both. Bradford's a little traditional." I looked around. The place looked like a staged model unit. Faux mid-century everything. New dishes on the counter, candles that smelled like overpriced autumn. This wasn't my sister's space. It was a showroom built for her boyfriend's Instagram feed. "You've done a lot with the place," I said, keeping my tone light. She was already busy chopping something on a marble slab. Bradford's mom helped with the aesthetic, minimalist sophistication. Minimalist sophistication? I almost choked on that. "Need help?" I offered. "Actually, yeah. Can you mash those yens and not mention work stuff to the guests?" I paused. "My work, you mean?" She didn't look up. "Just like, maybe say you run a business. No need for details. This group's a little intense about career talk." I nodded, but inside, something cracked. She wasn't embarrassed about what I did. She was embarrassed about me. Still, I said nothing. I'd made yams for people who'd laughed at my clothes in high school. I'd soldered valves in hospital basements while wearing thermals soaked in Freon. I could survive this, too. As we prepped, I tried to ask her about her classes. She said, "Fine," too quickly. I asked about finals. She changed the subject. I asked about us, how she'd been feeling lately. She ducked it entirely. Then, halfway through arranging charcuterie like it was a national art competition, she said, "Don't take it the wrong way, but just don't talk too much. Bradford's friends can be snobby. It's not you, it's just how they are." "Oh," I said, quietly. "Noted." That night, in her spotless kitchen, under string lights that smelled like cinnamon and curated perfection, I realized something I hadn't let myself believe. Lena wasn't just drifting. She was leaving. Not physically, not yet. But emotionally, she was walking away from our shared past, our parents, the meals we once laughed through, the blanket forts and ice storms, and the Tuesday nights I'd reheat boxed lasagna and call it family dinner. And I was letting her. Because I thought if I held still long enough, if I stayed quiet enough, she'd find her way back. Spoiler alert, she didn't. I wish I could tell you I walked into that dinner like a woman who knew better. But the truth is, I still had hope. Hope that maybe Lena would see me, really see me when the night was over. That she'd remember all those Thanksgivings where I tied her napkin like a bow and let her eat the marshmallows off the yams. But what I walked into wasn't a dinner. It was a stage. The guests trickled in like they were stepping out of a J. Crew catalog. Perfect hair, muted colors, and laughs that didn't quite reach the eyes. Bradford arrived first, of course. Crisp white button-down, too tan skin for November. He gave Lena a light kiss on the cheek, then nodded at me like I was the help. "You must be Morgan," he said, offering a hand like he was sealing a deal. "I am," I replied, firm grip, "and you must be the boyfriend with the yacht." He laughed, short, startled. Then Lena touched his arm like I'd just set him on fire. "She's joking," she said quickly. "Morgan's sense of humor is dry." Dry, like the cranberry sauce she left on the counter. Next came Eli and Madison, two marketing majors from New York who looked like they were bred for TED Talks and trust funds. Then Olivia Chen, the only guest who smiled like she meant it. She shook my hand with both of hers. "Lena talks about you a lot," Olivia said. "She says you built your own company. That's badass." I blinked. "That's kind of you." Lena's face tightened. "She's just being nice. Morgan mostly manages technicians now. She's not in the field." It was such a strange thing to say, like she couldn't let praise land unless she wrapped it in plastic and labeled it moderate. I said nothing, again. The apartment glowed with curated coziness. Lena had swapped her IKEA couch for something white and low-slung. There were tiny pumpkins on the table, linen napkins folded like swans. I helped refill wine glasses, fetched forgotten forks, even fixed the Bluetooth speaker when it refused to play Bradford's autumn jazz playlist. And then came the moment. We were seated, wine poured, appetizers demolished. Bradford raised his glass. "To chosen families and futures that shine." Everyone clinked like they were at an engagement announcement. Eli turned to me, swirling his Pinot like he'd trained for it. "So, Morgan, Lena says you own a business. What kind?" I opened my mouth, but Lena beat me to it. "She works in systems management, sort of like property infrastructure." I blinked. "That's not what I do." Everyone looked at me. "I own an HVAC company," I said. "Heating, ventilation, air conditioning. We do commercial installs, emergency repairs." "So you fix broken air conditioners?" Eli interrupted, grinning like he'd caught me in a lie. "Sometimes, yes. And sometimes I make sure NICU wards have working temperature controls so premature babies don't go into shock." The table went silent. Bradford chuckled uncomfortably. "That's pretty intense." Olivia leaned forward. "No, that's important. I mean, that's essential. My dad's in healthcare construction. He always says HVAC is the one thing you don't notice until it fails." I smiled at her. "Your dad sounds like a smart man." Then it happened. Lena laughed, too loudly, too nervously. "Let's not get technical. This is supposed to be a fun dinner, remember?" Fun. The word sat there, bitter and misplaced. I stared at my sister. I didn't recognize her. This woman with gold hoop earrings and a laugh that sounded like it belonged to someone who'd never scrubbed a stove in her life. "So, Lena," Olivia asked gently, "did your parents work in trades too?" I held my breath. Lena paused. "My dad ran a contracting business, and my mom worked with kids, early education." Ran a contracting business? Carl Hale fixed plumbing leaks with a smile and a tin lunchbox. He didn't run anything. He worked until his back gave out. He died without ever owning a second pair of boots. My mouth opened. But Lena cut in quickly. "Anyway, Bradford, didn't you say something about your dad's new project in Dubai?" Deflection. Classic. The meal carried on. The wine flowed. I felt like a coat rack with a pulse. Then came dessert. I placed the cranberry sauce in the center of the table. Homemade, tangy, just like Mom used to make. Lena frowned. "Oh, we already opened the jarred one. Bradford prefers it." And just like that, it was pushed aside. I didn't say a word. Not when they passed around store-bought pumpkin pie. Not when Bradford called Lena his little executive. Not even when Olivia tried to ask me more about my company and Lena redirected her toward Chase's family's vacation home. But I drew the line when Lena stood up with a glass and said, "I'm so thankful this year for new friends, amazing opportunities, and finally feeling like I've found where I belong." She didn't look at me. Not once. When I stood up to excuse myself, nobody tried to stop me. Except Olivia. She followed me to the kitchen as I reached for my coat. "That was hard to watch," she whispered. I nodded. "You have no idea." "She's not like this in class," she added. "She actually seems insecure. But tonight, I don't know what that was." I smiled faintly. That was a performance, and I'm the prop. As I turned to leave, Lena came in, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. "Where are you going?" she asked. "I have an early client," I said. "Emergency heat install." "Can't someone else do it?" "Sure," I said, "but it's a family with 3 kids and no heat. I figured someone's got to care." Her jaw clenched. "You didn't have to make the whole dinner about your job." "I didn't," I said softly, "but you made it about your shame." She blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means I see you, Lena. I see what you're running from. But you should know, no matter how far you go, you'll always be the girl whose sister unclogged toilets to buy you textbooks." And then she snapped. "God, Morgan, you're just an AC tech. Stop pretending that's some big deal. You crawl around in attics and fix vents. That's not legacy. That's labor." I stared at her. Then I nodded. "I'll leave you to your legacy," I said, voice calm. "Hope it keeps you warm." I walked out without slamming the door. But I promise you, it echoed all the same. The first thing I did when I got home was pour myself a drink I didn't even want. I just stood in the kitchen, one hand still on my keys, the other clenching a glass of cheap bourbon like it could rewind the last 4 hours, like it could burn away her words. "You're just an AC tech." It wasn't the insult that haunted me, it was the venom behind it. Like she had been holding on to that thought for years, polishing it, waiting for the perfect moment to lob it like a grenade over a candlelit table. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't cry either, not yet. Instead, I sat at my laptop at 2:17 a.m., staring at the Wellsford College tuition portal. I knew her login by heart. Hell, I created the account. $28,560 due by December 10th. The spring semester payment, due in 16 days. My cursor hovered over the payment tab. One click, and her life stayed easy. She'd stay wrapped in her comfort zone, her gourmet groceries, her tailored resumes, and I'd stay exactly where I was, unseen, useful, and disposable. I closed the tab. Instead, I opened a spreadsheet. For the first time in 2 years, I calculated the total cost of doing the right thing. Tuition, rent, groceries, books, flights, winter coats, summer internships. It came out to $127,843. That was 5 rooftop units. That was a down payment on a second truck. That was my future, melted into hers, unthanked and invisible. I closed the tab. Instead, I opened a spreadsheet. For the first time in 2 years, I calculated the total cost of doing the right thing. Tuition, rent, groceries, books, flights, winter coats, summer internships. It came out to $127,843. That was 5 rooftop units. That was a down payment on a second truck. That was my future, melted into hers, unthanked and invisible. The next morning, Jules, my best friend and office manager, walked in to find me elbows deep in receipts and bitterness. "Oh no," she said, "that look means one of 2 things. Either someone called you ma'am, or Lena finally burned the last bridge." I handed her the receipt stack. She didn't say anything for a full minute. "Tell me you didn't pay all this just to get called a vent rat," she muttered. "She called me a tech," I said flatly. She said it like a slur. Jules sat on the edge of my desk. "Okay, so, real talk. Are we cutting her off?" I didn't answer. You should, she continued. You really should. That girl has never filed a FAFSA, never stood in line for student health services. She thinks broke means only 2 oat milk brands at Whole Foods. Still, I hesitated. I promised our mom, I said quietly, when she was in hospice. I told her I'd take care of Lena. Yeah, well, there's a difference between taking care of someone and turning them into a person who can't take care of herself. The words hit hard because they were true. I didn't decide in a burst of fury. It wasn't a revenge movie scene. It was quiet, methodical, cold even. I logged into the tuition portal again that evening. I didn't delete her account. I didn't even change the password. I just didn't pay. Then I opened my business banking app and transferred the remaining $81,000 in her college fund back into the operating budget for Boltflow Systems. It was money I'd earned in freezing crawl spaces in 102-degree attics. Money I'd made by getting up at 5 a.m. every day for a decade. Money that deserved better than to fund someone's contempt. I closed my laptop. That was the moment everything changed. But the universe didn't clap. There was no thunderclap or swelling music, just silence. And then, texts. Lena. Hey, did you forget the tuition deadline's coming up? Lena, Morgan? Why aren't you responding? Then finally, one that was more truth than she probably meant to send. Lena, I hope you're not being petty about that dinner. You embarrassed yourself, not me. I didn't respond. Not then, not for the next 4 days. She sent a few more messages, cycling between passive-aggressive guilt trips and full-on tantrums. Meanwhile, I kept working. I handled backlogged requests, I repaired a busted commercial boiler system in a nursing home, I trained a new hire named Simone, first female technician we'd brought on in 2 years. The world kept moving, but something in me had finally stopped chasing. By the end of that week, the messages changed tone. Lena, Wellsford just emailed me saying payment hasn't been received. Lena, they said I'll be dropped from registration in 3 days. Lena, what's going on? It was 7 bon mot p.m. when I picked up her call. Morgan? Her voice was clipped, panicked. What the hell is happening? Why haven't you paid tuition? I was sitting in my living room with a cup of peppermint tea and no desire to sugarcoat. I decided not to. Silence. What do you mean you decided not to? You've always paid. I know, I said. That was the problem. You can't just, Morgan, this is my future. You're ruining everything. No, I replied. I'm removing myself from a dynamic where I'm constantly funding someone who looks at me like I'm an inconvenience. She laughed, a bitter, high-pitched sound. This is about Thanksgiving. Wow, you really are that sensitive. I didn't take the bait. You've made it clear I'm not part of your world, I said calmly. So now your world gets to pay for itself. But you promised, she said, suddenly quieter. You said you'd take care of me. I did, and I think 18 months of full support is a pretty good start. And now you're just, walking away, hoping I fail? No, I said, I'm hoping you stand on your own 2 feet. She didn't call me again for 3 days, but others did. Margaret and William, 2 of our parents' oldest friends, called to express concern. Lena's devastated, Margaret whispered like I'd just burned family photos in the backyard. She says you've abandoned her. She said worse things to my face, I replied. William took a more aggressive tack. You're being punitive. You're using money as a weapon. No, I said. I'm taking the weapon out of her hands. She's been swinging my support like a sword to cut down everything I am. They didn't get it. But Jules did. She brought over tacos and tequila and sat cross-legged on my kitchen floor. You know, she said between bites, this is the healthiest decision you've ever made. It doesn't feel healthy, I admitted. It feels like grief. That's because you're mourning a version of Lena that never grew up. And she was right. I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. Tired of making myself small so Lena could feel tall. Tired of buying herself landings every time she jumped without looking. Tired of building someone else's life while putting mine on layaway. So I turned off my phone. I cooked real meals. I took a day off and walked a trail up by the lake where our dad used to fish. And I wrote something in my journal that surprised even me. Loving someone doesn't mean staying. Sometimes it means letting go and hoping they'll return as someone who finally sees you clearly. I didn't know it yet, but that silence, those days of space, were the beginning of something else entirely. Not the end of our story, but the start of Lena's. She showed up on a Tuesday. No text, no call, no dramatic rainstorm for effect. Just Lena, standing outside my office in jeans that looked suspiciously off-brand and a ponytail that wasn't styled for Instagram. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just stopped seeing her the way I used to, framed in soft focus, backlit by potential. Marina, my office assistant, popped her head into the door. Someone's here for you. Says she's your sister." I looked up from the invoice I was reviewing. "Send her in." Lena stepped inside like she wasn't sure whether she was invited or about to be arrested. "I hope it's okay," she said, eyes darting around my office like she was seeing it for the first time. "I just needed to talk." I gestured to the chair across from me. "You're here, so talk." She sat, then stared at her hands like they held the script she forgot to rehearse. "I got a job," she said finally. "2, actually." I raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess, campus library and overpriced coffee shop?" She blinked. "How'd you—" "I've been broke before. There's a limited menu." She half laughed, half cringed. "I'm also applying for emergency scholarships and grants, and I called the financial aid office twice already. They said I might qualify for something next semester." I nodded. "That's good." Silence hung like insulation foam, too thick, too artificial. Lena leaned forward. "Look, I know you're probably expecting some big apology speech, but I don't even know where to start." "How about with the truth?" I asked. "Not for me, for yourself." She looked at the floor. "The truth is, I was a snob. I wanted to belong to a world that never actually invited me in. Bradford ghosted me the minute I told him I couldn't pay tuition. His mom suggested I work coat check at their golf club. I didn't say anything. I thought status made me safe," she continued. "Turns out it just made me replaceable." I could have said "I told you so," but that wasn't the point anymore. "Why are you really here, Lena?" I asked. She hesitated. "I want a second chance." "At Wellsford?" "No," she said, eyes finally meeting mine. "With you." That cracked something. I stood and walked to the window, watching a service van pull into the lot. "You hurt me," I said, "not just with the things you said, but with what you believed about me and about yourself." "I know." "Do you?" "I didn't before," she said softly, "but I do now. I thought what you did wasn't real success. I thought wearing boots and fixing things made you small." She paused. "But when I walked into that campus housing office last week, in thrift store clothes, begging for work study, I've never felt smaller." I turned to her. "You're not small because you work. You're small when you forget who made it possible for you to work at all." She nodded, tears brimming. "So how do I fix it?" "You don't," I said, "not all at once, and not for free." Lena tilted her head. "Meaning?" "Meaning, if you want a second chance with me, you're going to have to show up, not just to apologize, but to work." Her brows furrowed. "At Bolt Flow?" "Starting next week. Front desk, phones, scheduling, filing, real-world admin work. We run lean here. No room for vanity. She blinked. You'd really hire me after everything? I sat down again. I'd mentor you, not mother you, and definitely not fund you. A long pause. Then Lena smiled, a small, almost reluctant one. Deal. We shook on it. Her hand was cold, but her grip was steady. Before she left, she glanced around the room again. You built all this, she asked. Every vent, every wire, every nightmare client. She walked to the door, then paused. You're not just an AC tech. I smirked. Took you long enough. By the time Thanksgiving came around again, our cranberry sauce was homemade. This time, it was Lena who made it. She showed up to my place in jeans and an apron, hair in a messy bun, holding a battered recipe card with Mom's handwriting smudged in the corner. She didn't try to hide the cloves. She didn't try to impress anyone. She just stirred the sauce slowly, like it meant something. And it did. We'd been working together for 3 months by then. Lena showed up 3 afternoons a week to BoltFlow, where she answered phones, learned to use our invoicing system, and somehow convinced our grumpiest client to leave a 5-star review on Google. She was good, quick, intuitive, and surprisingly grounded when she wasn't trying to be impressive. She still went to class, just not at Wellsford. She'd transferred to North Lake Community College, where tuition didn't require a miracle, and nobody cared if your parents had a beach house. She was taking fewer classes per semester, working part-time, and, most shocking of all, seemed happy. I like it better this way, she told me once over lunch in the break room. Feels real, no one's pretending. That made 2 of us. That Thanksgiving, we didn't host a big dinner, just a small one. Me, Lena, Jules, Dylan, and Olivia, who brought a pumpkin tart and a bottle of red that was far too nice for our humble kitchen. Before we ate, Lena stood up, cleared her throat, and raised her glass. I just want to say thank you, she said, looking right at me. Not for paying my tuition, not for saving me when I didn't deserve it, but for finally letting me fall hard enough to get back up. She paused. You taught me that success isn't about who you know or where you go. It's about what you build, who you lift, and how you treat the people who show up for you, even when you don't deserve it. The room was silent. Then Jules muttered, well, damn, now the turkey's gonna get cold. We laughed and we ate, and for the first time in years, it felt like home. 6 months later, Lena pitched me a business idea, an expansion for BoltFlow into green energy, solar panel integration, smart thermostats, eco-friendly HVAC units. She'd done the research, built the projections, and even designed a logo. Think we could apply for a sustainability grant? She asked. I looked at her, this girl who once rolled her eyes at utility work, now talking about net zero buildings and carbon footprints like she'd been born in a hard hat. We can do more than apply, I told her. We can build it. I don't know where Lena's path will lead next. Maybe she'll finish her degree, maybe she'll run her own division of the company one day, maybe she'll move across the country and start something I never see coming. But I do know this, she's no longer ashamed of where she comes from. And I'm no longer afraid to walk away from someone who can't see my worth. In the end, love isn't just about holding on. Sometimes it's about letting go until the person you love walks back, this time on their own 2 feet.
So, what would you have done? Would you have paid the tuition? Cut her off sooner? Or maybe handled Thanksgiving dinner with a little less cranberry sauce and a lot more grace? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below, whether it's your opinion, your story, or even just a one-word reaction. Let's talk about it. And hey, if this story stirred something in you, inspired you, or just made you say, damn, I needed that, hit the like button and subscribe. There's more where that came from. Thanks for sticking with me till the very end. I'll see you in the next story.